Slayers, and welcome to another episode of She Slays the Day podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunswick. So today we have an awesome guest. Her name is Jamie Greenwalt. You may have heard of her before because I don't want to spoil it. But anyways, you should have heard of her, or at least her family business. Before we get to that, though, because she's got a great story and I'm excited, we are doing a true crime She Slays the Day edition. So a lot of you probably follow me on Instagram, and because I'm not shy about posting, saw that we recently took our entire team to Cancun. And then a lot of you are like, oh my God, you're so nice. Like our patients are like, oh, can I work here? And I kind of laugh because working for me, I expect a lot, but then we reward a lot. It's kind of one of those, I hate this phrase, but work hard, play hard type thing. So we had told I'll get to the murder in a minute. Okay, guys, just hold on. So in December of 2020, we told our team, hey, here's the revenue number we want to hit in 2021. If you do it, we'll take you to Mexico. Okay. And I didn't know this at the time because obviously it was not $1 more than our best year. It was quite a bit more than our best year, but we had done some calculations. It wasn't like we had pulled it out of nowhere. It was kind of okay, if we do this, this, and this is totally possible. And so then we hit it in November. We knew by July that we were going to be going. So it was very, very exciting. We took them to Mexico. It was great. Cancun's a little shady, not gonna lie. Sorry if the official tourism board of Cancun is listening to this. I don't mean to offend you. In fact, we're taking our girls there in a couple weeks. And we're okay, we'll just take direct transportation. But yeah, there's no leaving the resort. And we had kind of known that before going. This is not gonna be where we go to the Coco Bongo or Señor Frogs for dinner. Nope, we're going straight to the resort, staying at the resort, and then coming home. The fact where we actually made everybody sign waivers, which is funny because we it's how this waivers stuff that Kirby had this jargon, and the front desk is willingly signing it. And they're oh, so this is if we get hurt or whatever. I'm right. Or get kidnapped or murdered or anything like that. Yeah, your husbands can't sue us. They're just laughing. I'm ha, no, sign it. Yeah, make sure you scan it into the file. Okay, great. And based on the trip, probably should have thrown some kind of you can't sue your boss for sexual harassment, because I'm that's going to sound bad. Kirby's going to want to take that out, but we're not. Nobody was actually sexually harassed on the trip, I swear, but tequila makes people be crazy. Okay. So back to the murder. So we are at dinner the first night, and two of my staff are kind of whispering a little bit. And I'm what are you whispering about? And they're oh, nothing. And I'm you can't be whispering. And they're well, we didn't want to freak everyone out, but a few days ago before we got here, one of them had found out that one of the hotel guests 8 months prior had been murdered in the hotel we're staying in. And I'm was he American? As if, I don't know why that matters. I think what it was is how come I didn't hear about this? If Americans get murdered places, we hear about it, right? And they're yeah, it was a husband and wife from America. And I'm oh my God. Side note, you guys, if I ever get murdered in Mexico, will you please make sure the news reports on it? I am too cute and successful to not be reporting on my American death. What's that called? That thing that Americans think they're more important than everyone else? Ethnocentrism, I believe. But no, just within your own country. If I was French, I would want the French to report on my murder in Cancun. So now, here's what I'll say. Upon further investigation of the story, we learned that there was kind of some sketchy stuff going on with this couple. So husband and wife, they were drinking at the hotel bar, and she went back to her room, and he left the resort and then was found mutilated in the stairwell of the hotel. Yeah, I should have done like make sure kids aren't listening type of thing, but hopefully, but at this point I've said murder like 4 times. So like you've either fast forwarded because you don't want to hear this, or you've like, kids, you shouldn't be listening to She Slays anyways. You never know what's going to come out of that chick's mouth. So I'm like, okay, well, I wasn't comfortable with the fact of the details that he was mutilated in a stairwell, but I was comforted by the fact that what the heck was going on? Can you imagine a scenario where you and your husband are on vacation together and you're like, well, honey, I'm going to go back up to the room. And he's like, I think I'm going to go to Coco Bongo. Again, just in case Cancun tourism or Coco Bongo tourism is listening, I have no confirmation that that's where he went. I'm just throwing out random bars. Okay. Don't come at me. So that was interesting. And then like, you definitely see, like we were on the beach and about once or twice a day, you definitely saw federales on their like armored vehicle, or well, it was more like a UTV with their machine guns, rifles, AR or something. Automatic, whatever. I don't know my guns. I'm sorry. Cruising down. So you're like, okay, cool. So we went to Mexico and there was a murder. It was earlier. It wasn't like while we were there. So let's get on with the episode. So before we do that, I have a listener highlight. So this is from Faye Lynn, and it's a message on Instagram. And I actually remembered to do something with it, which half the time I feel like when you guys send me nice messages, I'm just like, thank you. And then I forget to make it a listener highlight. So the first sentence here I don't understand. I am the COA for blah in Portage. Now, the name of the chiropractic clinic is Blah Family Chiropractic. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that wrong. Blau, B-L-A-U. Hopefully it's something cooler than Blah. I'm really sorry if that's your last name, though. I'm just Blah Chiropractic. Even if it is pronounced Blau or some French cool way that I have no idea, I bet a lot of people just assume it's blah. Although I don't know where Portage is. I wonder if this is in Canada where Canadians just automatically know how to pronounce French stuff. Speaking of that, did you know that the fancy champagne is not pronounced Moet like you would think because it's fancy? It's Moet. Like what? I wouldn't, yeah. Anyways, back to the review. I don't know where Portage is. I also don't, is a COA, I've seen this now. Is this what we're calling CAs? I'm assuming. Chiropractic office assistant? Yeah, cool. Anyways, back to the review. I attended a webinar of yours this week and was blown away by all the information. The idea that to convert, you have to stay small and consistent has helped me wrap my head around this whole chiropractic social media thing. Just wanted to say thank you, and I look forward to gathering more tips from your page and podcast. So she is talking about, you guys know that Christy Hudson was a guest on our show, but then she had me on her webinar series for chiropractic or Chiro Health USA. That's like, God, she's been doing that webinar series for years. I pretty much told her she's the OG podcaster, but she's fun. If you haven't checked out their webinar series, they cover a ton of topics and have really cool guests like me. So yeah, that's what she's talking about. And I talked about social media. Okay, so let's get to it, people. So Jamie Greenawalt is her host today. No, I'm the host. We did not switch roles. She's my guest. And she is a graduate of the University of South Sewanee, where she earned a degree in global studies and environmental science. She's going to talk about like her adventures and what she did with that. Like, we're all going to be jealous. All of us like wanderlust millennials are like, I want to see the world. In 2017, Sewanee named Greenawalt a distinguished young alumni. Greenawalt received her Master of Business Administration degree from the University of Missouri, and she's worked for USAID and the World Bank all over the globe and joined Foot Levelers, the family business, in 2020 and is currently an executive vice president. I really think you're going to like this one. It's cool. Her story's cool. And just listening to her stepping into, I had a lot of questions about like stepping into the family business and like that dynamic. So hang on. But before we do that, you know what we're going to do? We're going to pray. Everyone breathe. Relax your jaw. Take a breath. Check in with your heart. How you doing? How's 2022 going? Have you connected with yourself? Have you connected to something bigger anytime recently? God, help us stop waiting for the slowdown. I feel like post-holidays in the new year, there's so much this expectation that life is going to slow down when? Life is going to slow down once. Once we get to here, things are going to slow down. And right now, things feel kind of suffocating. If anything, things are more chaotic than I felt like they were a month ago. And I know I'm not alone in feeling that and talking to patients and friends and other chiropractors. Help us realize that we have the brake pedal within us, and that it's not waiting until the energy or flow of the universe applies the brakes, but we can do that on a daily basis, on a moment-to-moment basis, where we just breathe and say, I have food, I have water, I have a toilet I can poop in and flush it and make it go away. I have this wonderful podcast to listen to inspire me. I have friends, I have loved ones that are healthy and that I am safe. And sometimes we just need to tell ourselves, like, you are safe. You are not in survival mode. You are not in fight or flight. You are safe. So be with us as we just be waiting for us. I know you're always waiting, always there, just wanting to spend time with us. So just keep hanging on, waiting for us to connect with you. In your name we pray. Amen. Okie dokie, artichoke. Here is my interview with Jamie Greenwald. So you are taking over. So if you don't know who Jamie Greenawalt is, which I probably already said it in your intro, but like you have more recently taken a very huge career change.
Yes, I have. I've always grown up in chiropractic because my family, my grandfather was a chiropractor, my great uncle is a chiropractor, my uncles are chiropractors, and just by nature of being associated with Foot Lovers, which is my family business, I've always gone to a chiropractor. I've been in that world my whole life. So I myself am not a DC, but I definitely associate myself with the profession very closely. And I feel like I'm a chiro kid. It's very well put.
Yeah. Yeah. The woman who, like, one of my best friends growing up, her mom was a chiropractor, and she's the one who like turned me on to chiropractic. And like my friend who's not a chiropractor is probably more drinks from the fire hose of chiropractic than even I do on some time. Like you chiro kids, like I just look to my children who are both very clear that they have no intention of becoming a chiropractor.
Yeah. I have a lot of those friends too. But it's nice. I mean, growing up in the profession and with this family of people who, have these views on, holistic living and knowing, really tapping into the fact that the body can heal itself and just being able to give it, that opportunity to do so, I think is really powerful. And I've always believed in and loved that about the profession, and didn't necessarily want to go into that immediately after I graduated from undergrad, and focused a lot on, my international, excitement about all things outside of the US. I was a global studies major and then worked in the Middle East a lot, the first couple of 4 or 5 years after undergraduate, before going back to get my MBA. And then after my MBA, I decided, no, it's time for me to go back and work for the family business. I really feel strongly about this, and ended up managing a portion of our international business at the time, which was great. But at a certain point, I decided that I didn't, I wasn't ready to quite settle down and have that be my forever quite yet. And so that's when I decided to move to Southeast Asia, and I ended up working at a very small island country called East Timor, which used to be a larger part of Indonesia. And went there, and when the UN was still posted there, as it's technically a post-conflict country, where they had UN peacekeeping troops, and ended up working at the Ministry of Finance, being an anti-corruption and procurement advisor. And so that was very interesting. And I had done a lot of work on governance and financial issues in my other line of work with international development, previously. So this was kind of a continuation on to that, and also tapped into my focus and passion for working with women and smaller marginalized groups, especially not only in developing countries, but women in developing countries are especially marginalized, and they have the fewest opportunities of them all. And so we worked with them on a lot of behavioral change campaigns and really kind of financial empowerment, smaller projects, which was really gratifying. And I was there for a year and a half. And of course, when I was there, I will not lie, I did enjoy taking very quick weekend trips to Bali. It remains one of my most favorite places. You can live there for a month for $80 and have rent a villa with the pool. I know, you're already packing your bags as we speak.
Yeah. Well, we were in Thailand. My husband and I went to Thailand a few years ago. And so I believe you, because you're just like, holy cow, if you can get there, it is. Yeah,
it's a paradise. The fresh fruit is unbelievable. People eat locally all the time. It's just the way of life is pretty simple, but it's poetic, and there's a beach and the weather's lovely, and there's malaria, but well, whatever. you win some.
I'm about to ask you a personal question. I apologize. Sure. So we haven't taken our kids anywhere where malaria is a thing. Okay. So my children, they're 7 and 9, they're not vaccinated. I'm not against, I don't know. I was thinking about, I don't know. My kids are running around my in-laws' farm. Maybe I should get her the tetanus vaccine. I don't know, I'm dragging but my husband and I have said that, if we go to Africa, we would probably do the Africa shots. So did you get him? Because there's a malaria vaccine, right?
There's not. No, you can take some oral stuff for it if you want. The chloroquine is something that you can take that I have taken certain points in time in various parts of, different places I visited based on the current status, not necessarily just every single time, because you don't want to be on that stuff for a long time. It's can make you hallucinate. It's really, really tough on your body. And personally, I don't love it. And I did actually get, I didn't get malaria, but when I lived in Timor, I had dengue. And I actually went blind for almost a full day because my fever was so high, and I didn't know if I was going to see again. And I was by myself, and it was very scary, but I did come out of it, and I didn't bleed out internally, which is the really bad kind of dengue that you can get. So that was a plus.
Oh my God. There's no vaccine for that, is there, either?
No, there's not. No.
Yeah. Okay. See, I'm kind of like a wuss when it comes to I'm like, yes, I want to go. And I'm like, can I get a shot? I don't want that though. I don't want that. So, okay. Anyway.
No. And I think I think it's just about, protecting yourself as best you can. There are a lot of good essential oils for a lot of that stuff, and things that we know we can do proactively that don't involve a lot of chemical interaction with your body.
So anyways, I interrupted you. Keep going.
No, that's okay. Yeah. So, I left Timor when that contract was done and moved back to DC. I did not have a job. I was still single at that point in my life, which of course I was, you're always, I feel like, struggling going from feeling one thing or another. If you're single, you wish you were in a relationship. If you're in a relationship, you wish that you could be single so that you had a little bit more flexibility to do and say and be and, travel to all the places that maybe you wish you could be. So it's always a grass is greener. But I was lucky enough that during that time in my life, I did not have a lot of attachment, and I really could do whatever I wanted and go wherever I wanted, which was such a blessing and allowed me to have, an opportunity to grow in so many ways. But when I came back to DC, I ended up consulting for a little bit for the company that I work for in East Timor to continue some other things as they closed down that project. And then I ended up getting a job at the World Bank, which is a very large, organization that lends money to countries in the form of, loans or grants to assist with infrastructure, governance, health, educational, initiatives to try and, bolster the efforts of those specific countries to help their people in many different ways. And I was focusing on working in South Asia, and that portfolio consisted of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Maldives, and Pakistan. And I traveled to over half of those countries, but worked in all of them in one way or another. And that was also really great because we focused a lot on food and nutrition security, which I'm very passionate about. And basically what that is, we all talk about what food security is. And that basically
this is like solving,
are you going to know where your next meal is coming from? And then does that meal have enough calories to sustain you if you were to divide up your total calorie consumption for the day, is your meal adequate enough to provide whatever you should have ideally as a human being for your size and weight and all of that. But the interesting thing and the exciting thing about this particular focus is that through this was through the European Commission and through DFID, which is the UK assistance form of assistance through the UK government. And they co-funded a $35 million trust fund to basically initiate grants in the South Asia region to focus on food and nutrition security and issues related to making sure that people had not only the number of calories that they needed, but the actual good nutrition and micronutrients in those calories to make sure that they were healthy. In that particular part of the world, most people have a very rice heavy diet. And white rice is processed, not nutritionally dense. A lot of times in a lot of these places, it's grown in places where the water table is already contaminated. We already are probably aware of all the arsenic issues that come with groundwater contamination in rice anyway. That's very common here in the US, especially in some of the former plantation areas in the southern part of the United States, which is now all very heavily filled with arsenic. So these particular areas in the South Asia region that I'm talking about are, it was really a different concept to ask them to start to grow other things that weren't, considered, high prized foods, and rice is what the kings and queens ate, and white rice is what the kings and queens ate. So you always try and emulate up the food chain, so to speak, pun intended, when you're talking about food like this, and in smaller, very smaller communities and tribal communities and indigenous people. And so trying to really change hundreds of years of thinking about how to prioritize that is a huge challenge. And also, there's a lot of government subsidies, just like there are in the United States, that have, major limitations on what these people can grow, because they want to get the seeds that have been genetically modified so that they can produce high yield wheat when the nutrition's no longer there. It doesn't exist in the raw form.
When I picture you having like this major dilemma where like there's this idealistic of like no GMOs and like super nutritious and things like that, and then kind of being in a more reality, it's kind of like the only thing I could compare it to is like when I look at like food stamps, where you're like, no, we should be giving food stamps for lettuce and apples and things like that. And then it's like, we can't really do that because blah, 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 blah.
Not ramen. But when people live in food deserts, even in the United States, there's an example of something that, was a real case study that I read about one time where, you have a family that has, several children. It could be a single parent household where the one parent works. And, there's a food desert, so they can only use food stamp. They may not have, appropriate transportation to be able to go to a grocery store, or it might be dangerous, or they might not be able to have childcare to actually go out and shop. Any and all of those are realities. But, if she can or he can go to a convenience store and use food stamps to buy chips and get, 15 bags of chips for the price of one bag of apples, and they have 6 kids, or even 2 children, how do you think they're going to spend their money? It's like, how far can your dollar go? So we're just incentivizing in the wrong ways. That's a whole other conversation though.
Yeah. But like, so as a Cairo kid and, being in this situation, how did you kind of like balance that? I don't want to call it idealistic because that seems like a jerky way to call how chiropractic directors think about nutrition, but like, you know what I mean? Like that and like the reality situation. And didn't you have like finance background? How did you get involved in like making a nutritional plan for all of South?
Well, I didn't make the plan.
Okay, right. But like, you know, like
no.
change the behavior and stuff.
There were, you know, many local stakeholders that we would rely on that already knew that the focusing on the highly nutritionally dense foods was much better than focusing on these other, you know, lesser nutritious foods. So, and that was one of the ways that we were largely and probably only successful, is that we would rely on the local organizations and the local knowledge of how to explain and convince these families to start planting different types of crops, and then showing, you know, how to cook an orange flesh sweet potato, and then saying, you know, doesn't this taste good? And if you put this particular spice on it, it's very similar to, you know, X that you're already used to cooking. And if you use this a couple times a week, you know, your child is not going to have a vitamin A deficiency, which basically means, you know, blindness. Yep. So if you want your children to have strong eyes, you know, eat these types of foods. And that was just, I've always grown up just, I guess, by association, knowing a lot about food and nutrition, because number one, I have a general interest in it. But number two, because of the family life that I live, we always prioritize that. And that's just, I'm lucky. And I know I'm lucky because I've just been exposed to it. And it's just a normal part of my life. So though I've never had formal training on that, I'm fairly knowledgeable about a lot of that, which is why I was able to kind of walk into that role without any formal training.
Yeah. Well, really, I mean, it sounds like you were just looking to change behavior. Right. Like, I mean, you had said you had done that a couple years. I don't know where we're at in the storyline, but like you had said you had done some behavioral changes of what, yeah. So kind of similar looking.
Sure.
To like,
and it's always, no matter what field you're working in, if it's education, health, governance, nutrition, even any nonprofit work you do right here in the United States, if you're working with a local nonprofit, you always really lean into the local knowledge of whatever community that organization is serving. And so it's the exact same principle. And, you know, working with local knowledge and leveraging that allows you to create better programs that are more likely that are going to be successful. So yeah, I've worked on behavioral change. When I was in the Middle East, I was in Baghdad for about 7 months, from 2006 to 2007, working in the green zone during the surge when I don't know if you remember that, but a long time ago, during sort of right before the wind down of Operation Iraqi Freedom, we had this surge where we sent a large number of troops out into the provincial reconstruction teams. There was one in every governorate, and I was working on the project that worked on providing more civilians to help with the, you know, democratization, so to speak, of all of those governorates across Iraq, as we were trying to support not only the U.S. military and peacekeeping, but also trying to help, you know, forge stronger relationships with the governments as they, you know, walked that path to democracy. And of course, there's been so many changes and things that have happened that did not necessarily go the way that we all anticipated it going. But I was at that moment in time, at that snapshot, that's what I was doing there. And we applied the same principles and working, you know, again, working through local, counterparts and leveraging their knowledge to try and really explain why, you know, doing something a particular way or changing behavior would be better for them, their families, their communities, their overall well-being, et cetera.
Your like first career life is incredible. Like you just described what some like, so how long was this? Like a 10-year period?
Well, I was only in Iraq for 7 months, but I worked in the Middle East for like the first four and a half years after college. And then I went to business school. And then I worked at Foot Levelers for 3 years after that.
Well, that was 3 years where you were running the international. Okay.
I was, yeah. Yep. And it was great. I mean, I have to say, I really rely on a lot of the experience that I had that I learned when I first came into the business in 2009, into Foot Levelers, because my father, Kent, would always tell me it's really important that you focus and really understand all aspects of the business. And so I worked every job in our manufacturing facility, and I worked in all the departments and for a certain period of time in shipping and in various parts of our manufacturing process and with finance and our sales and service team, and really tried to get a really basic understanding of how the business departments work individually and how they work together, which I think is really important to have a really good, solid understanding of what you're doing, because no matter what your contributions to the business, you need to know in what direction you're talking and who really is involved currently, or maybe who should be involved if they're not involved and at the table at that time. So that gave me a great perspective.
Did you always know that you were going to come home to the family business? Like,
I have always wanted to want to come back.
Okay.
And I hope that makes sense. But, you have these desires of things sound great in your mind, but sometimes when you live them, not everything adds up perfectly. It can still be great. Every time and especially currently, I'm absolutely in love with my job, and it's the best career move I could have ever made. And I'm wake up every day grateful and thankful for what I'm doing. And I feel so lucky. But even at that time before, when I worked here in 2009, I loved my job, but I still felt like I had some other things to do. And so that's why I ultimately transitioned out, which was one of the hardest things I have ever done in my life, to say, I need to walk away for the moment. But it ended up being great. And, a lot of things I learned along the way. How did your dad do with
that? Like, obviously he still loves you.
I think it was very difficult for both of us. I think we were both just kind of heartbroken in that moment, which was hard, but also, we've always been close. And I think, especially working together, I don't know if you've ever worked with a family member or have that in your life right now, but it has its own unique sets of challenges. It has its own unique sets of challenges and great things that go along with it. But it is something that you really have to be focused on and know what you're getting into. But in our case, we get along great, and we work together very well. So that has been a huge positive and plus for me.
So how did you then, where in the world are we at this point? Okay, how was then, did you kind of go like, how did you start to feel the urge to come home? Like, when did you know, like, I think I'm ready?
So when I was in East Timor,
is it when you were blind? No,
yeah. When I had dengue, I had this epiphany. No, when I was there, I was trying to get chiropractic. I ended up linking up with a chiropractor who came to East Timor from Australia, because it's very close to Australia. And then when I would travel, I would go visit former customers of ours. So when I was in Cambodia or Indonesia or Singapore, I would go visit these doctors that were former Foot Leveler customers and still talk to them, make sure that they were still working with us. And so I never really stopped, being a part of the business, maybe formally, maybe, I wasn't, on the payroll, so to speak, but I have never really stopped, maintaining those relationships with those people. Again, because it's just always sort of been part of my life. But formally, after, as I was, doing my work at the World Bank, when I was living in DC, I just kept wanting to know more and more about what we were doing, and being more and more interested in what Foot Levelers was doing than what I was really doing on a day-to-day basis. With as much as I was passionate and felt grateful to be working on these, food issues and these nutrition issues that are still, I'm still very passionate about. I couldn't stop thinking about, the fact that I felt like I really should be in Roanoke and really should be focusing on, getting back to really my roots, as cheesy as that sounds.
Oh, no, I find it really interesting that like there was this pull for you of like, you're basically a part of you are literally a part of solving world hunger, and you are like wondering like, hey dad, what's going on with this business? Like that's really cool.
Well, thanks. I wouldn't say solving world hunger. I think that's overly generous.
I am. It's official. You did it. Good job.
There are many larger efforts that are focusing on that, certainly. And that was a very small project. But, the good thing is that people are, and I will say the thing that I'm most important about, I know that we're vacillating back and forth between that particular experience and Foot Levelers.
Our listeners are
on the nutrition side of things. The thing that I think is the coolest about what we did is we really impacted the way that governments at the federal, what would be equivalent to the federal government level, budgeted for nutrition in their actual annual budget. So it became a line item, so to speak, for the food and agricultural departments in those respective countries to actually say, okay, well, now how do we take into consideration how we apply access to nutrition to our general population? And that was huge. I mean, Afghanistan was one of the first countries that did that. They were so on board with that, and worked at a really high level with the CEO of the Council of Ministers there, who, based on what's happened in Afghanistan the last year, has been tragic. But the mayor of Kabul, and all of these people who are so very involved in making these changes, and you're a part of helping support that. So that was really cool to see that happen. But on the Foot Leveler side, that is kind of coming from to an end. And
said like, sorry, Dad, I am actually going to leave. Like, how'd that like phone call go of like, all right, this time I'm sticking?
Yeah, I wrote him a letter, and I called him on the phone. I remember exactly where I was when I called him, and I was in my daughter's room in our apartment. And I just said, I want to come back. And I had been thinking about it for a long time. And at this point I was married, and we had our daughter. And I just said, I feel like this is not the place where I want to raise our daughter. And I want to offer her more opportunity, and I want to be closer to the business, because this is who I am. And I believe so much in what we do and the products that we make. We help people all the time. Every day, we help improve quality of life at the most basic level. We're a Class A medical device, which is the same as a toothbrush. And, you don't need a prescription. We are a prescription product, but it's not like, we're not a drug. We're not a drug solution. We're not, there's nothing that's risky about using, our products in any way. They fit in your shoes, and people generally feel better right away. So it is immediate and instant, and biomechanically, to be able to support your body from the ground up just makes sense.
Was your dad immediate and instantly like?
I think he was really cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
Polite,
I can imagine as a parent, like, okay,
of course.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
And there was a lot of conversation around that, as we moved towards basically uprooting our life and making this big change. Because of course, it's not just me anymore. I have, a husband and then a child to think about as well. So it's, how serious are you? And let's move forward to make this happen. But what can we do to make sure everybody's probably more cautious than they would have been in other cases, just because I had been down this path before.
Right. So you had mentioned that like you had worked in every part of the company at some point. Was that previously, or was that like this stage now where it's like, all right,
that was previously, but I certainly am around the building often, and know most, if not everybody in the building pretty well. which
So
is
they kind
which
of
is
make a position for you, or like, was it like, because,
well,
okay,
I initially joined.
Are you
No,
the
no, no.
CEO or is
No,
your
no, no,
dad
no,
still the
definitely not.
CEO?
No,
Are you
Kent is the chairman and CEO
okay?
currently. And then I'm a senior vice president, and we also have my colleague Steve is our other senior vice president. And so and then there are several members of our executive team who, manage the day-to-day.
Okay. And did you get to step in at the senior vice president position?
I did. I joined as a senior VP, initially as a senior VP of strategy.
Okay.
And then later that was changed to business development, which was really more of a probably more realistic title based on the scope of work that I was asked to oversee. And, that includes everything from sales and service and our customer service team, sales, marketing, HR, our seminars and education department. We do almost, between 250 and 300 events every year. We're doing tons of board certification. We offer a lot of continuing education opportunities. So
I don't know why I'm such an
full-time team that does that too.
That's right. You guys are like, I was just thinking about this tiny portion of Foot Levelers. And then it's like, oh yeah. And then you guys are hugely supportive of all this stuff within chiropractic. Okay.
Yeah. And the last thing that I didn't mention, but want to give credit to, we've got partnerships with almost all of the chiropractic colleges in the US and many out abroad. And we work a lot we've got wonderful liaisons who we work with, and clinicians, clinic directors, academics. We do a lot with research. So, in terms of us being a part of the profession, we're very much present, which I'm proud of. And that's been so important. When my grandfather founded the company in 1952. So we're actually January of 2022, we're kicking off our 70th year, which is amazing. And, from the time that we were formed by my grandfather, who started, it's such an American dream story. He started this out of his garage.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And knowing that, his patients weren't necessarily feeling better. They felt great after they got adjusted on the table, but then they'd leave, and then he was a chiropractor.
Yep.
And then they would leave and need to come back almost, immediately, because they didn't feel great. And he kept saying, well, I wonder why this isn't working for longer. Why aren't they not feeling the great effects of this adjustment for longer? And then he realized that it all started with the feet, because the minute they stepped off the adjustment table, the adjustment, went away, so to speak. So that's when he said, okay, let's support all three arches and make sure that we, give people the chance to remain, adjusted for a longer period of time. Yep. So that was the aha moment.
So stepping into the family business, did your dad have some advice since he had done that? Is your dad the one about it? Levelers big, or had your grandpa made this massive?
I mean, I think they both were instrumental in their own ways. My grandfather as a chiropractor obviously had, a lot of the academic and scientific respect for really truly saying, okay, biomechanically, I'm qualified to talk about this, and I understand how this is all related, and this is why this validates what we're doing, from a product perspective. But I think, Kent really has been instrumental in making sure that, our business supports the profession in many ways, that we're connected with all of the other, in any way that we possibly can, supporting other people in the profession, other organizations, and just really doing what we can to help the profession grow and become, an option for people that is not, secondary or tertiary to just, mainstream, the mainstream medical model. Because more and more people are being educated about, and I think have a better understanding now in 2021, at least, even in the last 20 years, I think that's improved greatly. Where people have a better understanding and they want more options to be able to take care of themselves in ways that don't involve a prescription pad, or just an explanation that, no, this is just the way you are. You're going to have to live.
Gosh. Yeah.
It's not an option anymore. People are not, accepting that. And thank goodness they're not, because there's so many better options, and they're simple. And, again, we go back to the notion and the knowing that the body can heal itself, and let's just help it do that. Let's help it get to that point where we can be self-healing as much as we can be. Obviously there's a time and a place for other types of interventions, but.
Absolutely. So was it all just easy stepping back in? Were there hurdles? Like, cause I'm just picturing, what I'm picturing is a chiropractic graduate associating, going somewhere, sowing their oats, exciting. Oh, sowing their oats. That's not a sexual phrase, right? That means like, anyways, going and working somewhere exciting, whatever. And then being like, all right, Dad, I'm back in town and you're planning on retiring soon in the next 10, whatever years. So this is going to be great. But I picture just like there being natural hurdles and communication. And
absolutely. I think there's hurdles on a number of different levels. Number one, there's always that personal, am I good enough to really be here question that's, you wake up maybe thinking that, maybe not as much anymore, but certainly at the beginning of any transition, I think you're always anxious and excited to prove that you belong, no matter what you're doing.
Well,
and
one of the main causes of imposter syndrome. Yeah. And one of the main causes of imposter syndrome is that you've gotten here by luck, not by skill. And so I would imagine as the child, you're kind of like, I know I'm good, but you would have hired me even if I wasn't your daughter, right? Like type of thing. Like, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, if people would assume that hasn't gone through my mind, I can't imagine. I mean, that's telling them that they're crazy. But I think in just having high standards and, high aspirations for continuing to do the good things that we've already done as a business without me, and certainly we have been so lucky. I mean, I think we talk about this internally all the time. I think we have the best team we have ever had. I think we have people who are passionate and excited about what we're doing. We have a lot of really exciting things that we're going to be doing, and launching this upcoming year that we've worked really hard on, that I think are going to be disruptive in a great way to how people, think about our brand as it has been up until this point. And so I'm excited about that. But I think, having the team that we have now has put us in a position to do more and be more than we ever have before. And I'm grateful for that. And sorry for the tangent. I just feel so strongly. I love my job so much. And it's taken a lot of hard work to get to this point, but all have been very gratifying and worth it, because if you really believe in something and you really feel strongly about it, if it's in your heart and in your gut, I think you're directionally correct. You just have to keep trying to make it work.
Right.
I've never had a job or a transition, and I've had a lot of different professional transitions based on just from a project standpoint, of all the countries and smaller projects I've worked on. There's never been a day where you start something new and don't say, well, geez, what am I doing? And did I make a mistake? Or, but you just got to, put your eye on the prize and don't look back.
Yep.
You can't look back, because you shouldn't doubt yourself. You made the decision for a reason.
Right.
You really did all the hard part. It's moving beyond that to move into your gifts and to validate what you already really know on some level.
Absolutely. Who was the biggest learning curve, learning to communicate with your boss, Dad, or because how many staff were you like working with, above, under, like regularly? Like,
I mean, I would say on some level I work with everybody in the company.
Right. And how many,
but I'd say
that?
We are small to medium.
Okay.
Size business. But I'd say for our teams, you know, we're such a small company in many ways that we collaborate a lot with a lot of different departments.
Yeah. So I picture that actually being then harder, where it's like these people they've worked together.
Connected.
So, okay. So who was harder, the team or dad? Like, because I'm assuming you had to figure out some communication, like their stuff with both.
Sure. I mean, I think if I could say this, I'll put it this way. I think trying to find my own groove and figure out how I can add value without disrupting what's already been established way before me, that's already working really well. You know, you don't want to come into something and say, as someone new, let's divert or let's change what we're doing, because there's no reason to do that. Even though there's a tendency to feel like you're obligated to do that because you want to feel heard or feel like you're contributing in some way. But I think having the wisdom to step back and say, okay, this is working beautifully. This is something that we do really well. There's nothing that there's always, no matter what the process is, or I mean, what line of work you're in, you can always be better and fine tune. But I'd say to answer I think to answer your question originally, I don't know if it's one was harder than another, that they were really hard. I think it's just finding the groove between, and really getting to know people. Getting to know people is, I think, the secret to any success. If you understand how someone thinks and feels and what their love language is and how they communicate, you're going to be able to be successful most of the time, when you collaborate together.
Well,
but it just takes time to learn that.
About you. You didn't make it about you. You took the time and I'm sure you still, but like really when you started was like just listening and learning and like not making it about like, I'm going to get this attention for being the new kid on the block and like fixing all these problems, and just being like, okay, this is working well. How do I plug in and add value while being a part of the team without disrupting the team?
That was my intention, but I laugh thinking about if any of my colleagues listen to this and then like what they would say, but that's certainly been my intention.
Like, that's the advice I would give someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh gosh. Okay. So you actually described your newest product though as a disruption to the way that like people would think. So before we tell people what it is, because I want you to.
I love the lead up. You're doing great.
I definitely want you to go on a tangent and tell how awesome it is. But how did the proposal of this idea go? Was it well received within the company, or like was it kind of like, oh, that's going to be difficult? Like,
well, I think that on the whole, everyone was pretty receptive. It was kind of more not, is that a good idea or not? But we went right into the how. How do we make it work? And that's where I think the genius of our team members really shines, because we were able to come up with this plan. So without further ado, I'll just say, in the last year on November 1st, so just 6 weeks ago, we launched our newest product called Mother Nurture. And Mother Nurture is the world's first and only custom orthotic system for pregnant women. And I've been excited about this because I have wanted to, even since I was pregnant with my first daughter, I was thrilled to and have access to foot levelers, because you know how you feel when you're pregnant. Your back hurts, everything. You feel like a Gumby a little bit, and you're walking, your hips move. You really inhabit multiple bodies. You're swollen. It's amazing that our population continues to exist. Sometimes when I think about it, all that we
continue to agree to sign up to do this over and over again.
Yeah. But, I realized that, how much stronger my foundation was than others when I was wearing the foot levelers. And I thought, well, gosh, this is we need to do something and offer this for more women, but really highlight the fact that their bodies are going to change, and they might need to, but that they will need different levels of support throughout that process. And so that's when our team got together and said, okay, we need to walk this path. So at the end of the day, we have launched this product, and I'm really proud of it. And I'm so proud of everybody that's worked on this, because it really has been such a great collaboration and an exciting, fun thing for us to do, because our packaging is very new and fresh. It's different than a lot of the more traditional,
Now, is that because you're listening to these podcasts that you were like, can we make this box prettier?
Well, I mean, I think aesthetics is very important, and, the package and presentation, if someone's investing into something that, all of our products are extremely high quality, and they're made here on site at our facility. Everyone is handmade. And so, based on the person's foot, feet are like fingerprints. We all have different, we all have hands, but our fingerprints are very different. And so our prescriptions reflect that. And we just wanted to go for a more organic feel and more personalized, and convey what we know about the body to be true. I mean, we've got 37, research studies. We've got a lot of evidence that, illustrates how effective our products are. And so being able to provide that in a new and fresh way, using beautiful collateral and QR codes and, things that are more appropriate to 2021 than probably some of the other ways we've communicated previously, was really fun. To leverage and take advantage of that.
Tell me about, because there's like 3 different inserts from
That's correct. So at the beginning, yeah, sure. Thanks. At the beginning of a woman's pregnancy, she might find out that she's pregnant towards the end of her first trimester. And generally, you make sure everything is going well. And then come trimester 2 is when the changes really start to happen. So we made the first orthotic available for the second trimester. Okay. And in the process, so the woman would get scanned towards the beginning of her pregnancy, get a pair of orthotics for the trimester 2, and then also trimester 3, and then the postpartum pair, which is for the first year after the baby's born. And so the idea there was that, you'd be wearing the first 2 orthotics for, 90 days at a time for, the 3-month trimesters that you're living through. And then, having the postpartum, that first 1,000 days, and then the first year after pregnancy, we wanted the woman to have a specific, support as well. So we had done a lot of testing. We had a pretty big test group of pregnant women at various stages when we were developing the product. So this has been over 2 years that has been coming together with the prescription, and based on all of the scientific algorithms that we have developed in our experience over 70 years, we have come up with this. And the feedback that we've gotten so far, I look at it every day, and, we're talking to the doctors who've either prescribed this for themselves and are very happy, or are prescribing for their patients because they see a lot of pregnant women. The feedback that we're getting is, oh my gosh, I've worn foot levelers, for example. I've worn foot levelers, for 10 or 15 years myself. And this is far better than my current prescription, because my feet have already changed so much and I feel so much better. And as they have moved into, their second pair for trimester 3, same thing. Oh my gosh, this is even better. So it's so nice and validating.
A new scan, right? Like a new
from
scan.
One scan. It's from one scan. Yep.
Okay, so what is different with the foot, or I should say with the insert, from that first to the second one? So
there's going to be more support for trimester 3. Obviously, there's the center of gravity has shifted. There's more weight gain. There's that pull on the lower back based on the center of gravity and how that shifts with where the baby is. So we've taken all that into consideration, as well as some of our own internal processes to make that prescription. And that's been the one that has been the most exciting for me, because that's really when the woman feels most uncomfortable.
Most miserable. And then how does the postpartum one, how does that one compare? Is that, you said 1,000 days. Is that what you're saying? Like the postpartum period that they would wear this insert would be
the postpartum period is really just for the first year and up until the baby's first birthday.
And what is that doing differently in that postpartum compared to like when they would return to their normal pair?
Well, there's still a certain amount of relaxin in the body. Even if a woman decides to not breastfeed, relaxin, they say, and this is very approximate averages because we've done quite a bit of research on this, but between 6 and 12 months is kind of when that leaves the body. If a woman's breastfeeding, the relaxin can stay in her body up to 12 months. And then depending on when she weans, it will, and of course, everybody's different. Every woman's different. So there's not a hard and fast rule about that. But from what we understand, that's the postpartum prescription that we have takes into account. There's still going to be a lot of laxity, and the type of support that we've provided is a little bit different than what we would use in just a regular orthotic.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if people want more information, where do they go? Like, and give this to someone who maybe isn't doing any foot levelers in their clinic. Like, how would they get started? And
Absolutely. So they can go to our website, www.footlevelers.com /nurture. And there will be a whole host of information about the product. It will show you all of the things that are included in the system. It will give you some statistics and research, and then talk a little bit about about how to use that and get started with us. That we work with all sorts of doctors. Obviously, if people who use us have our technology, we have a kiosk, which, a patient will generally stand on and then get a foot scan, and the foot will indicate the level of pronation that he or she may have. And of course, in this situation, the pregnant mom would indicate a certain level of pronation because of that weight shift. There's almost no examples of pregnant women that don't pronate. Okay. So we want to make sure that we support that. And so, doctors who have the kiosk would just be able to send the order directly, to us from there. But if they're not current customers, we have casting kits we could send for you to try as a starter pack.
Very cool. Well, I will make sure that link is down in our show notes.
Thank you.
Jamie, thank you so much for sharing your life with us.
Thanks for having me. I feel like it was a little hard to follow in some.
They're so.
But you know what? Isn't that how our lives are? Right? Nothing is ever a straight path, and I love the crooked road. It's so much more interesting.
I try. Well, the thing is the reason they're used to it is like, I frequently try and kick people off their talking points anyways, where it's like, okay, tell me about the dirty stuff. Like what really happens? So thanks for being a good guest, willing to play along.
Oh my gosh. It's been a pleasure. It's so nice to connect after the done a podcast. Yeah, I know.
Now
I feel so accomplished. What a way to end the week.
Put it on the resume. So.
I will.
All right, She Slayers, absolutely check out Foot Levelers. If you have not used them before, they have impacted your world. Like, absolutely. They have probably contributed to the reason that you have a library in your chiropractic college. They have probably contributed to continuing ed that you have gotten. So like, at least look into them and see how you could incorporate them into your practice, especially so much of our audience is peds and prenatal. So I'm just obsessed with it. So thank you again for being on.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right, She Slayers, until next week. Bye.